Hey, good afternoon. Happy, my crazy hair, Thursday, Throwback Thursday. And you guys know who I am. I'm Dr. Maisha. I am committed to helping you change beliefs through decoding the unconscious mind and improving your communication, your confidence, and your power in every area of life. So, we have been talking about unconscious communication. And earlier this week, we talked about behavioral flexibility. I think it was earlier this week we talked about behavioral flexibility. But today, yes, we did. We talked about behavioral flexibility on Monday. The days get a little bit blurred. And so today I want to continue that conversation and talk a little bit about rapport. And, I wonder if I wonder if you knew this, but like in communication, the resistance to communication is actually a sign of a lack of rapport. And it stings a little bit when you hear it, but I want you to hang with me for a minute hey, Manny, I want you to hang with me for a minute because I want you to better understand what I'm talking about so that you can lower your resistance to people's communication when you're talking with this simple principle. All right. So, I want to just kind of start by telling you a story of something that happened some years back. I love Cirque du Soleil. And the first time I ever went to go see Cirque du Soleil here in Atlanta, I remember I was driving into a parking deck, going to park my car. And this parking attendant was just so old. He was sort of a grumpy guy. So as I got my ticket and paid him, he sort of shoved the parking ticket in my hand and grumbled something and then went on about his way. And I was like, you know, initially I was like, what the is wrong with him? Right? Like, I didn't do anything to him. He was so rude. And I really could have like continued down that path. I really could have continued down that line of thinking and really been justified in saying that. And truthfully, that was just sort of my gut response. But I kind of caught myself in that moment. Now I have to say this is pre NLP training. But there were some practices that I had been doing before that had me to be able to recognize my internal dialogue before I went too far down rabbit holes. And so, like I tell you, those who know me, those who follow me by now, you know that I do a lot of personal development work. I've been doing a lot of, personal business development work for years and years and years. So by the time I got to NLP, I had been doing some work already. So anyway, I'm here in this parking deck. I'm parking my car. I'm like, what the hell? This guy, he was so rude. He didn't have to be that way to me. And then I stopped myself and my mind went to, I wonder what this guy is dealing with that makes him so grumpy today. And so remember, we talked about, early this week, people are doing the best they can with the resources that they have. Remember that principle we talked about earlier. People are doing the best they can with the resources they have. And intuitively, I think I might have known that. So as we walk from the car back to the CNN Center and we passed this guy, I had a little piece of chocolate in that I had taken from my car that I had brought with me as a snack because I love to take chocolate and snack on it all day long. And I just stopped and I said, sir, it seems like you're having a bad day. And I thought maybe this would just cheer you up. And I handed him the chocolate. And I said to him, I really hope your day gets better. And he kind of looked at me weird, like, this strange person coming up to him, handing him a piece of chocolate, and he tried to resist. I have to say, he tried to resist, but he broke out into this smile and he said, thank you. And then he told me what was on his mind. He told me how his day was going and how people had been rude to him and over again. And I listened for a minute and acknowledged how frustrating it must have been for him. And he said, well, thank you. And, we went about our way. We went in and we enjoyed the Cirque du Soleil, my very first Cirque du Soleil. But I enjoyed it even more knowing that just earlier I had made a huge difference in this person's life. Now, like I said, this was pre-NLP training, pre-neurolinguistic programming. So what I did not know at the time that this was a way that I established rapport and I exercised behavioral flexibility in my communication. So remember, we talked about the person the system with the most flexibility, and I'm talking about behavior flexibility, controls the system. And I didn't know at the time, but that was the principle that I was exercising. And I was able to get rapport with this guy because I exercised some, and I was able to actually have him open up to me, a perfect stranger, because of a little flexibility and a little rapport. So now let's talk about this word rapport, because I know I've said it many, many times before, and it gets thrown around a lot. And I want to kind of just unpack that a little bit, because it's really important as we're communicating these days with people. And when we think about, when we talk about, belief change, we talk about being powerful on our communication and being able to influence people in our communication, not in a manipulative way, but just be able to have people see, understand where we're coming from. Rapport is a very, very, very important thing to be able to establish. And some people establish it naturally. And then there are some people you come up against that you may initially get kind of like a, ugh, feeling, right? But then you can still establish rapport with those people. So rapport is, hey, yeah, that's right. If you're here, check in with me. Let me know you're here. Say hi. And if what I'm saying makes sense, just type makes sense in the chat box. If you're feeling what I'm saying, just type feeling it in the chat box. I want to know you're here. If you're catching the replay, hashtag replay in the comments so that I know that you're watching and you're getting something of value. Okay. So now rapport is a way that people can get connected at the unconscious level, beyond the conscious level, right? Beyond the conscious, at the unconscious level. It's just like when you walk into a room and you meet somebody and you guys just instantly connect. Even sometimes before you say a word, you just there's instant connection. Or when you meet someone and you start to talk and it feels like you've known them for years. You're actually in rapport with them, right? And so the principle behind rapport, the premise behind rapport is that people who are like each other, all right? And so that there are so many ways, no matter how much of a difference that you have between people, there are many ways to actually find that similarity, find that unconscious similarity and get in rapport with people. And for some, it has to do with language, the way you speak, the words that you use, the similarity in the way that you speak, both tonally or in the actual words being used without parroting. And in others, it has to do with body language. And some of you who are familiar with rapport, who have had some personal development, might know about things like matching and mirroring. Those are just a very few ways that you can use nonverbal body language to get in rapport with people. Right. And so it's a shared experience. It's a shared verbal or nonverbal language that gives you a shared experience. And that shared experience establishes a connection at the subconscious or unconscious level. And that can literally be the thing that shifts the way people respond to you. Right. So I would do this all the time when I was in my former life, right? When I was practicing in traditional medicine and when I got into integrative medicine, but particularly when I would practice in traditional medicine, when I was doing part-time locum tenens work while I was growing my practice, I would go into one of the practices where nobody knew me, right? The nurses didn't know I did locum. So that means contract work. I'd fill in for people. I'd go in, nobody knew me. The patients didn't know me. The nurses didn't know me. The front desk staff didn't know me. Right. But by the time I left, people were like, when are you coming back? And patients that I would have 15-minute encounters with that would come in for a cold, that may be seeing me for the first time. There's a way. And again, some of this was pre-NLP training. There's a way of being of establishing connection that had them tell me their whole life story when they came in for a cold. And I was doing it unintentionally then, but now there's a way that you can intentionally make that connection with people. And what it does, it magically dissolves irritation. It creates, it blurs the divide, right? And so you see, if you were to take 100% responsibility for your communication, not like blame, not like, something negative, but like really being at the source, being in the driver's seat behind the wheel of your communication, that you would understand that there are no resistant listeners, only inflexible communicators, right? And again, I know that stings, right? Like, what is she saying? It's it stings, but if you really were to get at the source, you really could be inside of um, any just about, because I'm not a fan of absolutes, right? Just about any communication with a person, and actually use rapport. That just that principle alone, there are many others in neurolinguistic programming, but just that principle alone can actually dissolve resistance in the listener. All right. So yeah, I know it's kind of a gut punch, but because we a lot of times we want to blame other people for the way our communication is or is not coming across, or the way our communication is or is not being interpreted or misinterpreted, for that matter, right? Because it's not our fault, right? And that's right. It's not your fault. We're not talking blame. We're talking becoming more flexible in the way we communicate in order to be able to be at the source of what happens inside of the communication. And when we learn how to establish this connection, this rapport, and when we can get to see that resistance, or I'm sorry, when we get to see the resistance, when we see resistance in communication, because maybe we establish rapport with someone, right? Let's say we establish this connection, we're talking with someone, and then you say something that's like, you see a reaction, you see a body movement where they're leaning back, or you see suddenly their facial change, or you see something happen that, indicates, oh, there's something wrong here, right? Something wrong here. Then you can use rapport to reestablish connection so that you can really get, well, what just happened there? And people can actually hear you when you speak. Okay, does that make sense? Type makes sense in the chat box if that makes sense. All right. So now, like, of course, this is not an absolute. This is not always the case. There are situations we know where no matter what happens, people won't hear you. No matter what happens, people's preconceived notions will overtake their actions. People's, we know that there's no absolutes, but by and large, as you're communicating, this is a principle, this is a factor that if you can learn to master, that will have communications, have people really hear you, and have communications go your way more often. And is that what we all want? We kind of all want communications to go our way, right? In a positive and empowering way. We want to be at the root. So now here's your homework, because I like to give homework. Your homework is to observe your conversations. Observe you in the conversation and observe the other person in the conversation. Observe where you're in connection or in the flow with people, in the flow, in rapport, I'm going to say, right? In rapport, in the flow, connected, and you're vibing. That's another way to say it, vibing with people, right? And observe where people are resisting your communication, where there's tension, where there's, inflexibility, and see if you can actually turn them around, being flexible in your communication, not necessarily trying to get people to see things your way or trying to be right, because that is more inflexibility. Just reestablishing the connection, reestablishing the rapport, reestablishing so that people can hear you. And post in the comments and let me know how it's going, right? Post in the comments and let me know how it's going, all right? So now if you want to go deeper and you want to learn more about the inner workings of the unconscious mind and about these principles of communication, and even about belief breaking, about, breaking and limiting beliefs, getting rid of negative emotions that keep you stuck in a particular belief pattern. If you want to learn more about that, then I invite you to a free course that I have on my website, just called Remap Your Mind for Success. It's easy to do. You just go to drmaisha.com. You can register right from the homepage. All right. And so I invite you to register for that free course. And I can drop the link too in the comments if you'd like. And of course, if you feel like you need a little bit more one-on-one, you're thinking, yes, I do have some stuck emotions. I do have some stuck belief patterns. I do have some stuck, some limiting, some self-doubt and some limiting decisions about myself, the world, about what's possible, then you're welcome to schedule a free mind remapping reset call, which you can do by just going to my website. You can actually click the button and schedule right from the homepage, or you can go to drmaisha.com/meet me. Yes, I will drop the link. I absolutely will. Thank you. So there you have it. Rapport and connecting, and knowing that if you're flexible with your communication, then you're more likely to be able to get people who previously could not have heard you to hear you. Okay. So type your comments, your questions, your experience in the chat box. Again, #replay if you're watching the replay, and looking forward to hearing what you all have to say and getting with you next week when we continue the talk about principles of communication and decoding the unconscious mind. All right. You all have a great rest of the day. Stay safe out there, stay well, and have a wonderful rest of the week. All right. Love you all. Namaste.